Luke 6, verses 1 to 11. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the cornfields, and his disciples began to pick some ears of corn, rub them in their hands, and eat the grain. Some of the Pharisees asked, "Why are you doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" Jesus answered, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and taking the consecrated bread, he ate what is lawful only for priests to eat. And he also gave some to his companions. Then Jesus said to them, 'The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath.'" On another Sabbath he went into the synagogue and was teaching, and a man was there whose right hand was shriveled. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal on the Sabbath. But Jesus knew what they were thinking and said to the man with the shriveled hand, "Get up and stand in front of everyone." So he got up and stood there. Then Jesus said to them, "I ask you, which is lawful on the Sabbath? To do good or to do evil? To save life or to destroy it?" He looked round at them all and then said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He did so, and his hand was completely restored. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law were furious and began to discuss with one another what they might do to Jesus.
Sabbath. Not a word we use regularly and not something we often find outside of the Bible. But it is an idea which, when we human beings are at our best, permeates our lives. It's an idea which has its heart in the promise of human flourishing. We first hear about Sabbath in the first book of the Bible, in Genesis chapter 2, at the end of the creation story. And here's what we read.
Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day God had finished the work he'd been doing. So on the seventh day he rested from all his work.
So the creation story starts with God working, and it ends with God resting. After 6 days of world making, it's done. The universe is completed. And you think your week was productive? Then we read that God rested. Did you hear that? God rested. God, who doesn't need sleep or a day off or a holiday, who doesn't get tired, worn down or bad-tempered. God rested. We, human beings, are made in his image. We were made to reflect what God is like back into the world. God works, so we work. God rests, so we rest. If we don't learn how to rest well, we'll never learn how to work well, and vice versa. And Sabbath isn't just a day to not work, though. It's actually a day to delight in the life we've carved out in partnership with God, to delight in the world around us, to delight in God himself. Sabbath is a day to flop down on our sofa, sink into it, look back over the work of the last 6 days, and just enjoy. Now, the word rested in Genesis 2 is Shabbat. And in Hebrew, that's where we get the word Sabbath. And it essentially means to stop, to be complete. But it can also be translated to celebrate. Here's another Hebrew word, menuah. And that's translated rest. But it's a very specific kind of rest. It's a restfulness that's also a celebration. Sometimes it's translated happiness. And to the Jews, menuah is something that you create. Here's what the author John Mark Comer writes about this.
It's about cultivating an environment, an atmosphere to enjoy your life, your world, and your God. It's more of a mode of being than a 24-hour time slot. We all need a little menuah once in a while. And that's what the Sabbath is for. The Sabbath is a day when God has my attention. It's a day when I'm fully available to my family and friends.
The Sabbath, then, is a deliberate suspension of the ordinary busyness of our lives. It's a day without a to-do list. It's a day when I don't accomplish anything and I don't feel guilty about it. Did you hear that? I don't feel guilty about it. Let me tell you, I'm speaking to myself there as much as any of you. So to take a Sabbath, to create a day of rest, is very much a positive thing, not a restricting thing. The Gospel reading a few minutes ago shows Jesus tangling with the religious leaders of his day. He was criticised for allowing his followers, his friends, to pick ears of corn because they were hungry on the Sabbath. He was criticised for healing a man on the Sabbath too. And his reply to them, to their criticism, is cutting. I ask you, which is lawful on the Sabbath? To do good or to do evil? To save life or destroy it? Human beings were not created so that we could keep the Sabbath, or any religious rule for that matter. Rather, the Sabbath was created for us, for our good and well-being. God knows we need that rhythm in our lives. So keeping a Sabbath day can be seen as an act of resistance, certainly in the Western world today. For so many people, life, at least before COVID-19, was overly busy with work and leisure activities. So much is demanded of us. Perhaps we demand so much of ourselves in all sorts of ways. To suspend that ordinary busyness, to have fewer demands on us for a day each week, and maybe for a short time each day through the week too, is to make a big statement that's countercultural. I am a human being, not a human doing. I will resist the impulse to be busy, to consume constantly, to frantically keep up with what something inside me tells me I should be doing. I know that for a time at least, the world won't stop spinning if I take the time to create a Sabbath space in my life. I will learn that my true identity and my value is in who I am, not in what I do. I affirm that there's more to life than meeting a deadline or maintaining the illusion that I am in control. I believe God has told us to take a day of rest, even build a rhythm of rest into our lives, and that He's done that because it's absolutely essential to our well-being.
Community of Soul Friends are a group of Christians from across West Yorkshire seeking to find a healthy rhythm of life. There's lots of resources on the website. There's also a new resource that we call Wayfinder. This is for people who wouldn't claim to be a follower of Jesus, but which contains things which help you develop a healthy rhythm in your life. You can download this from the website or let me know and I can post one out to you. You can also download a resource called the Sabbath Manifesto. It's on the church websites too, and this is a resource from the American National Day of Unplugging. In it are a number of resources, practical ideas that you might find helpful.
Any talk of developing a Sabbath day or rhythm in our lives may seem a bit of an odd thing to do, given that we are in the midst of a pandemic. Surely things will change a whole number of times before we get out the other side into a new kind of normal. Well, yes, I think there's a lot of truth in that. But we can only ever live our lives one day at a time, being mindful of our circumstances, our feelings, our hopes, and our anxieties. We follow Jesus in our lives as they are at this time. And as time passes and things change, so will we, and so will the rhythm of our lives. So learning to create that Sabbath space now is about developing new, healthy habits which can provide a terrific foundation on which we can build as things change with the passage of time. I think this is a principle which is healthy for all human beings, whether you would call yourself a Christian or whether you wouldn't. So to ground all this a bit, what might a time of Sabbath look like for you and for me? Well, it's a day when my phone is off, my email is closed and you can't get hold of me. Or it should be. The Sabbath isn't a day to buy or sell, to get more. It's a day to enjoy what I already have. It's a day to seek to connect with God, with our church family, and with our wider family and friends. It's a day of saying no to frantic activity, because the Sabbath is a day for menua, that Hebrew word I used earlier, a day for the celebration of life in God's very good world. Genesis tells us that God blessed the seventh day and made it holy. He blessed a time, a period of time, for our well-being. No matter how much you love your job or fine-tune your work-life balance, by the end of the week, you'll be tired. Your fuel cells are close to empty. But Sabbath rest refills us. It refills us with energy, creativity, vision, strength, optimism, clarity, and hope. Here's John Mark Comer again.
For 6 days we wrestle with the world of space, the hard work of building civilization. But on the Sabbath, we savour the world of time. We slow down, take a deep breath, and drink it all in. We push the slow-mo button. It's a day where your goal is to savour every second, a holy Sabbath to the Lord.
So there's a natural rhythm to this world, a rhythm of seasons, the circadian rhythm of the day. For 6 days too, we work, but then we take a step back. And for 24 hours, we Sabbath. We enjoy the fruit of our labour. We delight in God and in his world. We celebrate life, we rest, and we worship. So do you see, God is inviting us, inviting you to join him in this rhythm, this interplay of work and of rest. And when we don't accept his invitation, we reap the consequences. And let me tell you, I have been there in the past. I'm also very conscious that I don't want to go there again. Fatigue, burnout, anxiety, depression, busyness, starved relationships, worn down immune systems, anger, tension, confusion, emptiness. These and other things are the signs of a life without rest. Now, you don't have to think about Sabbath. It's not a sin. It's just stupid. You can eat bricks. It's not a sin. It's just ill-advised. Ultimately, it's our choice. And if we need help, let's ask for it. Let's look at the resources that I've mentioned today. Build a Jesus-centered way of life which works for you at this point in your life. There's an author called Wayne Muller who's written extensively about keeping a day of rest. Here's something he wrote.
Sabbath is not dependent on our readiness to stop. We do not stop when we are finished. We do not stop when we complete our phone calls, finish our project, get through this stack of messages, or get out this report that is due tomorrow. We stop because it is time to stop.
Now, isn't that an antidote to the stresses and anxieties many of us find ourselves under? Yes, it needs work to create it, but isn't that truly Sabbath as resistance? Sabbath as resisting those things which would make us less than human? So may you come to know that God is interested in human flourishing, that God is deeply interested and deeply cares for your well-being. May you learn to develop Sabbath as part of a healthy rhythm in your life. And may you grow to experience Menua, that you may grow in energy, in vision, in strength, in optimism, in clarity, and in the hope that only God can bring. Amen.